thank you so much for joining us. I'm conscious that there are a load of other places that you could be doing, and it is late at the term. I'm going to keep this snappy and useful to you. So we're going to present the results of our 2024 Behaviour Barometer. So in the process, going to share some findings. I've basically done a load of digging into Teacher Tapp's data. I think there's some stuff that is worthy of a wider audience. That's what we're going to sort of throw in. In the process, I hope that I'll either prompt insights. There may be ideas that are probably not new to you, but hopefully there's something that you'll learn from it. Or if it's things you're convinced about, maybe I'll provide you ammunition with which you can speak to others about it. And then I'm going to share some ways to learn more, and in particular we'll look at how you can apply the Behaviour Barometer in your school. Welcome if you're just joining us. We're literally just getting started. So 3 things I'm going to do. I'm going to provide an introduction and provide a bit of context. I'm going to share the Behaviour Barometer national findings, or some of the highlights. You can get the full findings in the report. And then I'm going to talk about how you can apply the Behaviour Barometer in your school, starting with the introduction and context. Hopefully you're all familiar with Teacher Tapp. If you're not, feel free to take 60 seconds to sign up. At 3:30 every day, thousands of phones buzz. It's about 11,500 at the moment, and teachers start answering questions. 3-step process. 1, usually 3 multiple choice questions. 2, you get the answers, and 3, you get a blog, you get a few other things that you can read. Why bother introducing that? Well, the bulk of what we're going to share, what I'm going to share today, comes from that Teacher Tapp data. So we've got these 11,500 teachers. That means we've got data from primary schools, secondary schools, AP, all over the country, from new teachers, from head teachers, and so on. And we can do quite a lot of interesting things with it. So at simplest, I'd just say we're not just making this up. We've got a really robust and I think unparalleled data set that allows us to really dig into what's going on and provide, I think, a really clear set of answers about how things are in classrooms and what we might want to think about doing with it. You may be less familiar with how school surveys works. That's kind of the other half of Teacher Tapp, if you like. School surveys is a way for leaders to find out what staff, pupils and parents are thinking, and that might be a school leader or a trust leader. 3-step process. Pick yourself some questions, design a survey, send that survey out to your colleagues, and then you get a report back that shows very clearly what staff, parents, pupils think, and whether things are changing for the better, what you might want to attend more to, and so on. We do use some school surveys data in the report that I'm going to share, and it's school surveys that would be the platform that would allow you to run the Behaviour Barometer in your own school or schools if you wish. So that's the introduction and context. Basically, we've got these 2 tools, we've got these sources of data that allows us, that provides the data that I'm going to discuss now for the national findings. So the Behaviour Barometer, what is a barometer? It's kind of a way of finding out what's going on and how things might look. And what I did was I spent quite a long time digging through literally everything Teacher Tapp has ever asked about classroom behaviour around the school. And then working with Becky Allen, our chief analyst, to try and make sense of it. What does it mean? What statements are kind of true and also useful and potentially novel and interesting that I might be able to share? So let's start with the kind of why behaviour, why not something else? Well, what do teachers most want to be different in the world, in their lives, in their schools? And we've got a question for that. We've got a question for most things. We've got several ways of asking this, but one of this is, if you woke up tomorrow, what's the first thing that you change in your school? 4 in 10 teachers nationally say their priority would be behaviour. And as you can see, that is streets ahead of anything else that they might want changed. So for staff, behaviour is the #1 thing. Not only that, behaviour has these kind of wider impacts. So teachers saying in their last lesson, 3 statements. Again, each one of these is a different question. 3/4 of teachers tell us that in the last lesson they taught, teaching and learning was interrupted. 45% say learning stopped completely at some point. And 1 in 10 teachers say that disruption went on for 10 or more minutes. So why do teachers want behaviour improved? Because it's making it incredibly difficult for them to do the basic thing that they're kind of turn up to school every day to do. It gets better or worse, depending on how you want to look at things. We've asked teachers on a regular basis, what is the #1 source of work-related stress or unhappiness for you in the last fortnight? Behaviour is consistently the top thing they mention. We asked them, what is the #1 source of additional workload for you? Behaviour comes first. We asked them, what might make you leave your school, or what might make you leave teaching? And behaviour is the #2. So the #1 thing of why people say they want to leave school is senior leaders, and the #2 thing is behaviour. The #1 thing of why teachers say they might want to leave teaching entirely is pay, but again, the #2 thing is behaviour. And I share all of this not to depress you, hopefully, but to try and make the point that improving behaviour is not just a matter of improving our students' classroom experience, although that is extremely important. If we are looking at any kind of school improvement, if we're trying to say, okay, we want to reduce workload, we want our teachers to be happier, we want to increase teacher retention, whatever it is, behaviour is a really powerful, improving behaviour is a really powerful goal that will allow us to pursue any one of those things, or hopefully all of those things. And this, I think, is just quite an interesting illustration of that change over time. There was a time, so here we've got this question that I mentioned already, what's made you feel stressed or unhappy in the last couple of weeks? The green line is student behaviour, purple line is accountability. We've got time running from July 2022 to October 2024. There was a time fairly recently that the thing people were most upset and unhappy about was some combination of Ofsted, in-school observations, exams and exam prep, whatever it is, all of that stuff. That's now no longer the case. The thing that is making teachers most unhappy is behaviour. I think that's quite interesting because we've spent a lot of time, we've spilled a lot of ink thinking about what should the inspection framework look like, what should exams look like, and so on. And perhaps we've not nationally spent as much time talking about behaviour in the same vein. So first interesting thing that I found in this kind of digging into our behaviour evidence was behaviour is a concern. It's perhaps a bigger concern than ever, and it's a really wide concern. Second thing I found that was quite interesting was just a number of surprises. Let me pose some questions for you. I won't get you to try and all shout out the answer, but then I'll offer you the answer because each of these surprised me to an extent. So question 1, where is behaviour worse? Is that primary or secondary schools? And interestingly, we find substantially more primary school teachers saying that teaching and learning is stopping completely in their lessons because of poor behaviour than we do secondary teachers. As a secondary teacher myself, that's not necessarily what I would have anticipated. Surprise 2. When is behaviour worst in the school day? Again, have a little think. Where might the answer be in your own school or wherever you work? And despite all this, lessons are disrupted, it turns out that actually it's not a patch on lunchtime. Lunchtime is complete chaos in many schools. And that, again, is quite interesting because actually that's the point. Many staff are busy, many staff are out on duty, but a lot of lunchtime is handed over to midday supervisors, or there's a handful of members of SLT going around. And actually, it's the point that we withdraw and maybe try and grab some lunch or do some marking, whatever else it is we might think we need to do. So again, I think this is worth thinking about from a school leadership point of view. What's happening during lunchtime compared to the rest of the day? And are we offering everyone the support they need to make it work as well as possible? Third thing that surprised me, what's the most prevalent undesirable behaviour according to our 11,500 or so teachers on Teacher Tapp? And the answer, this maybe is the least surprising of all, is 68% of teachers saying in their last lesson they had students chatting when they weren't supposed to. And maybe that's related to some of these other ones as well. So suggestion 1, behaviour is a big issue. Suggestion 2, there are surprises. I suspect if we all went and asked these questions in our own schools, and that's maybe what I'm going to encourage you to do, at least something might surprise us about how our colleagues react. one might turn around and say, actually, behaviour is fine in my school. And that may well be true. And if so, I'm very happy for you. However, I think it's always worth considering the possibility that what you see as a senior leader is not identical to what is seen and experienced by early career teachers, cover teachers, teachers who are just having a really bad day. This is an idea that I find quite interesting, quite compelling. It's the idea of the thermocline of truth. Just to give you a second to read this. So there are things that I might say to an immediate colleague that I might mention a bit more politely to a line manager, and I might not mention to the head teacher, not in as many words. And so for those in the audience right now who are quite senior and say, and are thinking, actually, behaviour is all right in my school, maybe it is, great. I think, again, it's worth checking in with colleagues and seeing whether they share your feelings. We find when we ask these questions about was your last lesson disrupted, do you think the behaviour policy is effective, and so on, senior leaders are much more likely to answer positively than classroom teachers. There is a real difference of experience, and whether that's because senior leaders are just established and kind of pupils know exactly how far they can go, whether it's something else, yeah, just worth looking into, worth thinking about. So we asked teachers through Teacher Tapp, what is it that you would like to see? What should a behaviour policy look like? And they asked for 3 things. And what I'll do is I'll show you a couple of examples of quotations from each of them. So thing 1, clarity and consistencies. Teachers want pupils and other teachers to have a really clear idea what's going on and for that to be consistently applied. A couple of quotations from them. Yeah, I'll come back to this idea in a second. Second thing, they wanted meaningful sanctions. So third thing, they wanted collective effort, and that incorporates 2 things. They want staff working together on this, and they want pupils feeling bought into it. What do we take from this? A lot of staff don't believe that things are as clear and consistent as one might hope, and we've all been there. I think we've all seen actually, if I I can have a quiet word with this student, even though the behaviour policy says I should do X, I'm going to do Y instead, and that's going to keep everything on the rails for the rest of today. And so the thing I think staff are asking for is less of that, more clarity and more consistency. The other interesting thing about this was, if you believe Twitter, there are only 2 ways to deal with behaviour. One is to bring back the cane, if not hanging, and the other is to give up on any form of sanctions whatsoever and just let kids do whatever they want. What was interesting about analysing these responses from teachers was that actually what I think they're asking for is pragmatic solutions. I've got a couple of quotations here that I think are really revealing. Just give you a second to read them both. So what I find interesting about these is, yeah, you've got the one school of on Twitter and everywhere else, which is kind of more strictness, more firmness, no excuses, give them a detention, at least in theory, and the other school, which is, more love, unmet need, and so on and so on. But what you see teachers asking, basically integrating bits from both of these into sometimes a single sentence. So look, there's got to be robust, got to support teachers, and we've got to give students the chance to reconcile differences through mediation and restorative intervention. I've glossed that as saying teachers just want pragmatic solutions. Yeah, I think the bottom line is, nationally, teachers are asking for more support with behaviour. Things are really difficult, and what they want is support that does 2 things. It really backs them up, and it actually helps children to reach the solutions that they need, let's say. To achieve this, we had a look, we analysed the correlations between some of the different forms of data that we have. So here are lines sort of taken from questions that we would use with school surveys and would use with Teacher Tapp. So one of those questions is, do you think leaders consistently enforce the behaviour policy? Do you think they're supporting effective behaviour management? Do you think the behaviour policy is effective? And we looked at the correlation between teachers saying these things, which essentially mean that the system at school level is working well, and then how they reported things within their own classroom. And hopefully it won't surprise you to say where staff feel more supported, where staff feel leaders are enforcing the behaviour policy better and more fairly, and they consistently also say that behaviour in their own classroom is good, is desirable. So just to sort of recap, sum up the national findings. 1, behaviour is a really big issue. It's a big issue in terms of classrooms, and it's also a big issue in terms of stress, workload, well-being, having a really direct impact on teachers' decisions to continue within their school, and so on. 2, behaviour isn't necessarily how you might guess, how you might expect. There are surprises about where tricky behaviour comes, when tricky behaviour occurs, and so on. 3, that maybe applies in your school, even if you're not thinking that right now. I think it's worth asking. And then 4, there are these things we can go for, particularly clarity, consistency, meaningful follow through, and make a really big difference to staff. That's great on a national level. But everything's different. Everywhere is different. Different populations of pupils have different needs. Different schools have different needs, and so on. What does that mean for me? So the other half of the behaviour barometer work that we've done is we wanted to open this up for schools, to give schools a chance to see, well, okay, I know what the national picture is. What does this mean for me? And so what you can do is, I'll give you a link to do this in a moment. If you come to this web page, for which I'll give you a link, you can do the Behaviour Barometer survey totally free in your own school. You'd come from here, if you press the button at the bottom, the yellow button, Get Started, you come through and you then, ignore the bit at the top, you need to go to sign up for the Behaviour Barometer free trial, and then you get to a page which asks you some very simple details. I'm now going to seamlessly, I hope, come through to a page which show you what you would get to. Yeah. So you then come to a page that looks a little bit like this. You can ignore the rest of it because you won't have past surveys coming. You come to create survey. You'll be doing a staff survey. You choose when you want it to open and close. Now I've got a survey and we need to come to add questions. We tend to recommend starting a survey with a general wellbeing check, totally optional, but assuming you want to do that, click here. We then suggest asking, before people tell you everything that's wrong with the world, asking, what's in your mind, what could be better, what are you grateful for? We suggest asking, okay, in general terms, what could be better? And then these are kind of the full set of topics that school survey users have access to. For the Behaviour Barometer trial, unsurprisingly, you'll have access to the Behaviour Barometer. And here we've got the questions that we found to be most revealing, most interesting, and we think most useful to ask your own staff. So you can have a look at all of them. For each, so here we've got how much of the lesson did behavioural issues interrupt teaching and learning? That's one of the questions I've talked about earlier. We can hover over here to see what the potential answers are. So we've got over 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and so on. So I'll tick that one, I'll tick that one, I'll tick that one. Click whichever ones you want. I've changed my mind. I don't want to know how much of the time they follow the school's behaviour policy. Choose whichever ones. Is there anything else I'd like to let the leadership team know? Yeah, well, off than that. And there we go. I can now move the order of the questions around. I can change the opening and closing date. And when I'm done, I can create the survey. So it's dead simple, I think. And within this, I can then into here. I can copy this link and share it with my colleagues, or I can copy a QR code or even generate a poster. So you can do that totally free and find out what's going on in your school and how that compares to the national picture. Final thought for you, it's quite tough talking about behaviour, particularly at this late date in the term. Everyone's tired, it's dark, it's cold. No one necessarily wants to start this new stuff. We think it's important to share these things. We think that behaviour is a big issue, and the data that we're seeing is revealing a set of patterns that we think deserve attention from everyone, from school leaders, from anyone who's involved in these things. That's why we're sharing the work that we've got, and that's why we're inviting you to have a look at these things. I'm going to come back to my slides, I hope, and share the QR code if you want to look into this yourself, and then we can hand over. There we go. So if you like QR codes, there's a QR code. If you think QR codes are quite annoying, you can see what the actual link the QR code takes you to is there. But yeah, I'm going to pause there, and I can hand over. If you've got a question, feel free to tap it into the chat, or you can unmute or stick a hand up, and then we'll unmute you.
Hi, Harry. It's June. When you've done the barometer in your school, do you get results back that compare your school with the national picture?
Good question. Yeah, so we've shown you the national picture. With the barometer, you get a report back for the date that you've chosen to close it. That comes like automatically when the survey ends, and that includes benchmark data to similar schools nationally, which is schools from the same phase, primary, secondary, AP, and same free school meal quartile. So yeah, you'd be able to say, actually, you know, 3/4 of staff are complaining, but it could be worse, or 3/4 of staff complaining about such and such, and we are kind of out of whack and we need to do something a bit more about it. Thank you. Other questions? Feel free to type if you've lost your voice and feeling shy, or feel free to stick a hand up or unmute if you are not. Okay, absent questions. I'm happy to stick around if anyone wants to talk about anything that I've talked about in a slightly smaller and less intimidating group, or hear anything more about school surveys or Teacher Tapp. Feel free to stick around and we can have a chat. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. I did promise a short and sweet summary, and there it is. We will pop out an email to you with a link to the full report that's got lots more detail and data and charts, and a link to the survey with a chance to use that in your school if that's helpful. I wish you a very good afternoon. Kevin.
Yeah, hi Harry. Can I just ask a question around coastal deprivation and, say, free school meals, pupil premium, and other types of need? Is there a comparison around that at all within the process?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess kind of underneath that that question is the kind of, you know, how different are things. Because we've got 11,000 teachers in the Teacher Tapp data, that is enough to do a kind of meaningful free school meal, to look at how the experience does differ, and it won't surprise you if I say we do see, you know, say, how long was your lesson interrupted for? A high free school meal serving school is going to say longer. The average teacher there is going to say longer than in a low free school meal environment on average. And yeah, so within the report that you get back from the Behaviour Barometer, that will show the benchmark data there will compare to schools from the same free school meal quartile as your own. So yeah, that will compare to similar. We don't also do regional comparisons, essentially because we can't do both free school meal and regional, and things like coastal. I had a colleague who looked into this and he's like, well, most British schools are within 50 miles of the coastline, so it's even though we know what we mean by coastal, it's quite hard to draw a line that distinguishes there. So but you would get benchmark data compared to similar free school meal environments.
Thank you.
I saw a couple of other yeah, so is the recording? Yes, we can send that to you. Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions?
If I ask a cheeky one, Harry.
Yeah, far away.
Is
You're
there
our
a
top
network?
questioner, so you can have as many as you want at the moment.
Okay. Is there a network where people sort of say, this is what helped us within the questionnairing kind of theory?
We share a load of case studies on our website, and then within our help centre we have stuff from school essentially where they've said, oh, this is the thing that's worked for us, and we've shared that. So yeah, we can point you towards that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Be quiet now.
No, I mean, crack on. Does anyone else have a question, or are you just here enjoying other people's questions? No, I think we're done. Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, wish you a very good afternoon.